Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to talk about how sometimes working on client projects is just difficult. Alright, so a few weeks ago I talked about momentum. Like when you're working on a project, you're coding away or whatever, when you get a bit of momentum with a project, you don't want to stop. You don't want to stop to go eat dinner, to go have lunch, to go to the bathroom. When things are clicking, you just keep going. Everything goes great, and it's great. As a programmer, it's just you start knocking things out and everything is fantastic. I mean, it is such bliss, right? The other side of that is friction, right? So sometimes you have a project where just like everything just seems to go wrong. Now, my stress levels are a bit high this week. And this is one of the reasons I missed the last couple of days of videos, just because I've just been sort of just really stressed out. I mean, I've been stressed out to the fact that like I'll be doing the dishes at night, just like, man, angrily doing the dishes, right? Because my mind goes off to this project, to one of our projects. It's not all of them, but just one project. And I was just getting all angry, and then everybody has to say, "Are you upset about something?" I said, "What? Oh, no, sorry, something else, something work related," right? So it's just one of these things. And I'm trying to be like, let me tell you what happened. So basically we have this project that it's a brownfield project. So we took over some existing code and we just need to make a few small changes to it. I mean, nothing major, right? So rather than me do the changes myself, I outsource it to some developers, right, and supervise everything, so make sure that everything is going well. So we did this before I went to California, like over a month ago. So they were working on that, and this project is different because there's like it's an app and then there's an API, and I'm not going to give too many details about this, by the way. There's an app and it connects to an API. There's another company that's dealing with the API, so that's not us. We're just dealing with the app. So everything was kind of going well before I went to California, and then we got it released, but then there was one little issue, so they went back and fixed that little issue, and then they found like 4 bugs, right? So it was like 4 bugs in the thing, so that was, it was embarrassing, but we'll fix those. These kind of things happen. Certain things were not as good as they should have been, and I was not on my game as much as I should have been because I was in California and I was trying to do that, and and then also had a few other issues on other projects, and then also was trying to enjoy the holiday. So anyway, when I got back, we got back to it, and then once the developers started working on these 4 little issues, then all of a sudden the API stops working, or it starts being inconsistent, where we get inconsistent results from the API. And then we did this thing, I don't know if you've ever worked in a corporate environment, you see this a lot, where you have it's usually like when I was in investment banks, it was always, there's always arguments between us, the server team, and the network team. Like things weren't communicating or things weren't running properly. Some people would say it's the code, the developers would say it's the server, the server team might say it's the network. So it's always this thing, and nobody does any proper investigations because nobody has proper analytics tools, and everybody just says, it's not me, it's you, right? We kind of had this kind of issue here on this project, which was fine. So, there was nothing we could do, and then a few weeks went by, and then finally everything came back up, and then by this time, the developer I was using was no longer available, so I was working with a development company, and I've worked with them many times before. They're really good. I like the quality of their code, but I know it's working with an existing project. Sometimes it can be difficult. So they said, this developer is not available, we'll give you a new developer who's really good too, and I said, okay, are you sure? He said, yes, so whatever. So the new developer starts working on it. And it takes a bit longer than I think it should, right? And meanwhile, I've got the client saying, hey, we were a bit concerned that things are taking a bit long and all this kind of stuff. So you're kind of in the middle there, so you're checking, how are things going? Everything's going right. Is it, the server's gone down again, so then I have to go back to the server, and then we have those kind of, political things, right? It's like having office politics without the office, right? So, and then, finally, and then the strangest thing happens. And I don't know if you ever work with developers, sometimes you'll get something where they'll ask a question that doesn't make any sense, right? It's just like out of nowhere. You think everything's going fine, we're near the end, and there's like a question like, I don't know how to describe it, because I don't want to say anything that's too technical, because you might not get it because it's related to the project, but it's kind of the equivalent of like when a toddler asks you a question that like, why is blue? Why is blue, right? And you go, sorry, why is blue? Why is the sky blue? Why is blue a color? Sorry, what do you mean? I don't know, why is blue? And then you just sort of go back this way. So I kind of had a question like this from the developer, and it scared the shit out of me, right? So I'm like, sorry, I need to know more what you're asking. He said, just ask the client, why is blue, right? And I said, sorry, I don't, I need to know what the context. I mean, I'm looking at the code. I understand, why is, he was asking me something about the code, which he should have known the answer to because he had access to the code. But he insisted I ask the client. And at this point, it was like, either I could spend the next, few hours trying to drill down to what it was, or I could just ask the client, right? So I asked the client, and then the client says, what do you mean, why is blue? Why is what blue? And I say, hey, no, never mind, forget it. No, sorry, let me go back, right? So then I go back to the developer, and then, they said, okay, never mind, I don't need to know why blue is, right? And I said, okay, so how much longer is this gonna be? And then we release a build, and then it was like, it was still, there's still issues with it. So we're trying to knock out those last few issues. This is like one of those situations where when I talk about friction on every sense, when you do client work, a lot of times it's not easy. You have clients to deal with. If you hire developers, you have to deal with them. Even if you develop something yourself, you have different issues on different platforms, and sometimes you just have friction all over the place and your hair just goes gray. It's not nearly as simple as making your own apps, and if a decision needs to be made, you just make it. That's where the friction comes in. As a lot of times, is people, getting other people involved and everything like that. So, anyway, this kind of thing happens from time to time. Not very often, but sometimes it does. So where it may be the case where I'm pulling a few all-nighters here, this weekend or early next week, and just do it myself, which would be a huge mess, or it's going to be, sort that stuff out with the developers. But it's one of these things when you're working with clients. It can be really hard. And for those of you who've done client work before, I know lots of people who've sworn off client work just because of these kind of issues. You're dealing with lots of different moving parts and trying to keep everybody moving. You could just be like, hey, I'm just going to code everything myself, which is the easiest way to do it, by the way. That is the furthest, if you're just going to say, I'm just going to code everything myself, not deal with any other developers or designers or anything like that, just be a one-man band, that is the most efficient way to do it, but it is the least scalable way to do it. You can only deal with one client at a time. You put 100% of your time into dealing with that client, and then when that project is over, then you have to go out and find another client and have to deal with all that stuff. So anyway, I'm kind of, I know I'm kind of just ranting on it, but I've just been like, this week has just been driving me crazy. So I just want you guys out there to know, who are looking to do client work, it's not always easy. In fact, lots of times it's really, really hard. Sometimes it feels like pushing a boulder up the hill, and sometimes it's easier. And it could be because of the client. Sometimes some clients are difficult to work with. Some are really easy to work with. It could be working with developers. It could be working with the technology. It could be there's loads of different things. But sometimes some projects are just more difficult than others. And when you're pricing, this goes back to the last conversation we had a few days ago. When you're pricing, you can't expect that all the lights are going to be green, that you're going to have momentum from day one, and you can't start saying, oh, I could do this in like 2 hours, right? Because sometimes things just pop up. You've got disk space errors, you might have network errors, you might have the client call you 3 times in the middle of those 2 hours. Lots of things could creep up, and you have to quote appropriately for those kind of things. Anyway, sorry to unload all my dirty laundry on you guys today. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys on Monday.